Firstly, just talk us through what inspired this partnership at this time.
Well, Renaissance Capital has been active for many years in Africa and other emerging markets in the oil and gas space. Oil and gas is really one of our core competencies, one of the industry sectors that we understand the best. We have been familiar or aware for some time that there is a limit to the product offering that we can give to some of our clients in Africa, both the indigenous companies, the medium-sized companies and the national oil companies. And Jeff here is a bit of a legend in the oil and gas industry. So we've dreamed for some time of doing something together. And in the last 6 months or so, we've been talking in a lot more detail about how we can join forces.
Jeffrey, just talk to us about what opportunities currently exist within the emerging market space. And I'll tell you why I asked this. There are reports that oil investments are dwindling because the costs of capital are rising and there's a lot of uncertainty with a lot of petroleum industry reforms in countries like Nigeria, for instance.
That's true. The costs are rising and they will continue to rise. We've seen them escalate over the last 5 or 6 years dramatically, and they will continue to increase probably with some of these regulatory changes that are going to be imposed on the industry by government. We see opportunities, however, though, in emerging and frontier markets, beginning in Africa and elsewhere, that are going to be great growth opportunities for a long time, however, outside of these OECD basins.
All right. Now, Andrew, just by way of the sort of investment trends we can anticipate, we're seeing a lot of consolidation in many sectors, mergers and acquisitions. What are we likely to see within the oil and gas space? Because, as I said earlier on, investment losses in total of about $24 billion in the last few years.
Sure, I think you're going to see more Chinese investment coming into the space, particularly in Africa. You're going to see national oil companies wanting to capitalize on what they have, you know, their biggest assets. NNPC in Nigeria, we're seeing what's happening in Ghana. There's going to be a huge flow of capital into this market. You know, what the split exactly is going to be between the big majors and the local indigenous players remains to be seen. That's one of the things that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 5 years. But what is clear is the status quo right now is going to have to change.
And Jeffrey Waterous, just your comments on the fact that in Africa we're beginning to see new oil-producing nations evolve. Ghana, Uganda, a lot of interest as they go on stream with oil later on in the year. But again, a lot of concerns on the input costs, the capex that's needed, and just the stability of the industry. When people are looking at Africa, are they looking at the newer players or the more mature players?
It's a combination, but I do applaud the efforts of the state oil companies of Africa and the local champions, the indigenous companies. I'm originally from Canada. I'm an Irish Canadian, and in Canada we have many local companies that have grown to be world champions, and I expect someday soon some of these African companies will emerge on the international scene that we don't have today, and I would applaud them.
All right, and staying with you, Jeffrey, we all know what's happened in the United States on the Gulf of Mexico with the oil spill from BP, and it's raised a lot of concerns about environmental standards. There's also the pressure that's coming in from pledges made at the UN Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen, and we're seeing leading African economies starting to make pledges for lowering gas emissions and moving into a greener agenda. How's that going to influence the oil and gas industry going forward?
All of these important criteria for energy, beginning with supply, strategic supply, are partly in conflict with pollution. And therefore, we have to judge carefully and balance them properly without overreacting. National security of supply still must override other considerations, from my point of view.